This week's poem is called I Love This Game Part 2. It's the second one in succession from I Love This Game Part 1, and Part 1 was about my high school concussion, and Part 2 is about my second concussion in college when I was a sophomore. And so the concussion itself is talked about in the poem. Again, this poem is not about the concussion itself. It's about everything leading up to the concussion and then what happens afterwards. Because if we don't talk about those things, but the only thing that people see is that the fact that I had a concussion and then I'm back on the field the very next week, well, then we forget about all the things that led up to that and whether or not it could happen again and what are the consequences of repeating that process over and over again until something really bad happens in which we could have stopped ahead of time. Leading up to this second concussion was everything that happened in high school. 2 state championships, 1 scholarship, right? I started all 3 years. I experienced a couple of injuries, a dislocated kneecap and then a concussion. And then along that route, and a lot of what my poems are about are the fact that during high school, I was this super awkward, pretty awkward kid, and I used football as a way to kind of disguise myself and amplify. I just felt like it was an advantage that I had socially because there was such a gap socially that I didn't really understand what I was valued for aside from what I got most attention for, what I got most rewarded for, which was my ability on the field. And so because of what happened in high school, that became a part of my identity. It wasn't just a part of my identity, it was my identity. I was known for being a football player. I believed myself to be a football player. It was my entire life, right? Spring, summer, fall. It was all football all the time, thinking about football. And then moving on into college, that continued. But it didn't just continue. It was a continuation amplified to exponential degrees because in college, just right down the street from high school, so really I knew pretty much everybody in college. And if I didn't know people, they knew me for playing football. And so because it was such a football-focused school. And so it's not just that my identity was as a football player, but that it was solidified even stronger as a football player in college. We're living in a bubble in college. We're living in a fish tank and people are watching us and adoring, idolizing everything we do. And we're getting so much attention and there's so much emphasis and pressure and excitement around what happens on the field. And then we go 3-9 my freshman year and I start the last 3 or 4 games and it's, it was horrible to experience a 3-9 season, but at the same time, still, there's so much attention given from that moment and so much attention not only on the field but afterwards and socially and on campus and that's what you're known for. And that doesn't decrease or go away as time goes on. In fact, maturity wise, I didn't become more mature in the sense of discipline and work ethic and being responsible. Like, if anything, I got less mature in that sense because everything was taken care of for me. Every meal taken care of. I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to do anything. Everything was taken care of. I didn't learn who I was. I learned that what was most important about me was who I was on the field. Because if I did well on the field, I received so much feedback. How can I discern between what kind of reality provides that much feedback? There's nothing like it. It is a drug. It's an addiction. And in fact, football becomes something that it's players are proud to be addicted to the game. It's something that is entrained within us that in order to have success, in order to be great, in order to be one of the ones that people talk about forever, to have a legacy, you have to be so addicted to the game that it's comparable to needing to breathe. And if you don't have that, you're not going to make it because everyone's doing the same thing you are. Everyone's trying to win. And so if you don't have that intensity to win and to succeed and prevail and to overcome adversity, then you'll never make it. In what case is addiction to anything of this world a good thing, in which you'll do anything, no matter the consequences, to who we are as people, to our character, to our bodies, to our minds, in order to have success on the field. That's not something that we would ever do in any other circumstance. It's prized in our society. We think that addiction to success is worth living for, is worth striving for, but what's left in its wake? If you have success but nothing else to fall back on, well then what was the point? And so everyone in football is striving for success in football. But when it comes time to, such as in my case, make a decision between what's best for me and my body and my mind and my soul and who I was and learning about who I was as a person, which I couldn't discern at the time, or being or continuing my identity or feeding my identity and not allowing the possibility for someone else to take my spot because out of fear that if they took my spot, I wouldn't be seen as valuable anymore. When in reality, that's not the case at all. It wasn't my ability on the field that made me valuable. It was who I was as a person that made me valuable on the field. Football exploited my character, my ability to succeed and prevail and overcome adversity. That was inside of me, that was used for football's purposes. And in the moment in which I was concussed and couldn't make a decision, a rational decision, because of course the tool that I use to make rational decisions is compromised. How can I make a decision based on that? How can I make a proper decision? And so when that time comes and I don't know how to make a decision, of course I'm going to want to get on the field. Of course if I'm not out there to protect my position, then it's going to get taken. If I'm not out there and the team is doing well, well, then what does that say about me as a person? What does that say about me and my worth as a person? If all I know about myself and the greatest reward that I have in my life was who I was on the field. And what happens when that's gone? And so this poem it's not about the concussion, but it's about my desire to get back on the field as soon as possible. And it wasn't just get back on the field as soon as possible, but I knew on the horizon was a game in Arlington against Texas A&M. We had just lost last year, the previous year in overtime. No, it wasn't overtime. It was our first game in Arlington against Texas A&M. And I wasn't going to miss that game. I wasn't going to miss it. I was a Cowboys fan. How was I going to miss that game? You're not going to take me off the field because of a concussion. And that's the pride that gets us in trouble. Because it's not just that. It's not just one concussion. It's the fact that if I get on the field, I can experience another concussion. And at that point, how much more compromised is my brain and my ability to make a decision? And will I be willing to take myself off the field at that point, or would I still want to continue? And over the course of a string of concussions and injuries like this, what happens to me as a person and my body? And what can't I see at the end of this? In the middle of this addiction for football that I don't want to realize is going to come to an end. For many people don't have a backup plan. Luckily I did, even though it's not really what I wanted because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I did have a backup plan. But when that comes to an end, what is left? This is what the poem's about. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much.